In the year 1783 in the state of Pennsylvania, two Irish immigrants had a son that they named Hugh Glass. There's not a lot of information about Hugh's childhood, but we know when he gets a little bit older, he has a sailboat and he works on the east coast of the US. But all of a sudden, while he's working, he gets captured by a pirate, a French pilot by the name of Jean Lafitte, and he tells Hugh that if you work for me, you will live, and if you deny, you will be killed. He basically becomes Jean's slave for about 2 years, until Jean decides to go to the shores of Texas. Texas right now is not part of the Spanish Empire or the United States. It's basically filled up with a whole lot of Native American tribes, and these tribes hate every single person that comes off the shore because they assume that person is a pirate, especially when they're white Europeans. But it's at this moment that Hugh knows that he has an opportunity to escape, and he runs for it. While he's running away, not only is he watching out for Jean's men following him, but he's also watching out for all the Native American tribes that are looking for these white folks. So luckily, he passes all that threat and gets to a much safer area. You might say Hugh wasn't a pirate, he was a slave, but he was a white European that dressed like a pirate. So the Native Americans would assume that he's a pirate and kill him without any excuses. But just like we said, he luckily didn't get captured in the state of Texas. He kept going and finally reached the state of Kansas. Kansas wasn't any safer than Texas because there were still tribes that are against these people. Back in the day when the Europeans used to get to the Americas, they wouldn't go alone, and if they did, they would go with a whole lot of people, and they had weapons, so they were considered a huge threat for the natives. But if you're by yourself, you're gonna get captured and killed. Eventually, a tribe in Kansas captures him and takes him to the chief. And the chief says, "Why did you bring this white guy here? Just burn him." So they were forced to take him to the fire. But before they set him on fire, Hugh has an amazing idea. He pulls out this red dye that he had in his pocket and tells the men that you could use this red dye for anything, even face paint. The natives really liked it, and without the permission of the chief, they let him escape. Either way, Hugh decides to move forward and finds a place that's much safer for him. There's more white Europeans there, and the natives are friendly. Since Hugh had finally found a place he could stay, and he had a weapon, he started hunting different animals for their fur and started selling them to different types of people. And also he found a native wife. His job was going well. He would hunt and make a whole lot of money. But news got out that in the area of Yellowstone up north, which is basically modern day Montana, there are a whole lot of different animals, and there's a lot of them, so you can hunt all types of animals, especially beavers. Hunting beavers was extremely popular at this time, so that's one of the main reasons they wanted to go to Yellowstone. So Hugh decided to go, but he wanted to convince his homies and other people around him to go with him, and he convinced 13 people to go, and the next day, they set foot out there and started walking. You have to know that they started going from Kansas, which is a whole lot of ways until Montana. And they're not going with a car or truck or a horse, they're going on foot. When they're moving forward in the state of South Dakota, Hugh was looking for some food, but all of a sudden he finds himself in a bear's nest, and a female bear attacks him. Of course, female bears are more prone to attacking because they think you're a threat to her cubs, so they will for sure attack. The only way a male bear would attack you is if they're starving. The bear attacks Hugh Glass, smashes him into the ground, and starts pounding on him, where almost every bone breaks, especially one of his foot and one of his arms. So he's damn near paralyzed. And finally, the people that were with Hugh help him out and some way or another get this bear off of him. But they were confronted with a man that could not move, let alone speak. But one of them had an idea to create a stretcher type thing with the wood so they can carry him until they can fix him. So they finally make this little bed thingy out of wood and start carrying him through this brutal terrain. This is no joke, it's extremely cold. It's a mountainous jungle, and it's not easy carrying a 200-pound man everywhere you go, which is why one of the guys in the crew decides that they should let go of Hugh because he's dead weight and he's going to die eventually anyways. The man that came up with this idea is named Fitzgerald, and Hugh can see all of this taking place, but he can't say a word. There is a lot of people that resist this idea and say no, we have to take Hugh Glass with us because he's one of us, which is why a fight breaks loose, and eventually Fitzgerald's men that were siding with him win the battle, and they basically leave Hugh Glass there to die. They truly believe that he's going to die this easily, but that's where they're wrong, because after a while, Hugh started to crawl with the barely working arm and leg towards a river that was flowing. Over there he could find something to eat and of course get some fresh water to spray on his face and drink. After getting a little bit of adrenaline and realizing what had taken place and where he is, he had only one goal now, not to start a fur business with the beavers he wanted to hunt, but to kill Fitzgerald. When he's crawling and struggling, he finally confronts a native that had just killed a bison and he's eating it raw. At first, the native man thinks Hugh is a threat and points a gun at him, but he realizes that he's not a threat and he's damn near dying, so he allows him to eat some bison. They eat it raw, and this raw meat gives a lot of energy to Hugh Glass, maybe saving his life. It was also freezing, so he could save some meat for later. After getting some more energy, Hugh started moving up north towards Yellowstone because he knows that's where Fitzgerald is going to be at. This route is no joke. It's hundreds of miles long, and it's no flat terrain. With the weapons he had, he could hunt for some meat, eat it raw, and continue moving forward. Eventually, after 6 months, he gets to Yellowstone and only wants one man, Fitzgerald. But Yellowstone is not a small place where you can just find anyone you want. So he started asking around that, have you seen a man that looked like this? And he would continue moving towards the direction that the people would lead him. This would take a few more months, and eventually he found out where Fitzgerald is hiding out in a place called Fort Atkinson. But Hugh Glass realizes that there's a huge problem because Fitzgerald has joined the US Army, and if he kills a man in the US Army that had just been formed, he's going to be in a lot of trouble by the army, not by Fitzgerald himself. This story we're telling you has a very great movie about it. It's called The Revenant, and I highly recommend watching it. Eventually, Hugh Glass is confronted with Fitzgerald and they have a fight. But I'm not going to ruin it and spoil it for you. If you've seen the movie, you know what happens. And if you haven't, I highly recommend you watch it because it's very interesting on how brutal life is, especially back then. It is because of this story and the movie Revenant that Hugh Glass is known as one of the most badass men on earth. There are a lot of badass and cool people throughout history, don't get me wrong, but the story of Hugh Glass is a little more interesting and it stands out because it seems like Hugh had 9 lives and he would refuse to die.